You're muted, Balang.
According to no, he muted himself. Balaya Vanakkam.
Yeah, vanakkam. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Nice meeting you, all of you. Raj sir, Tony, Mani, how are you? Your health?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Great. Nice to see you. Long time. And another Mr. Alagiri Swami, Bama, fine. Okay, vanakkam. Vanakkam.
இப்போ லிங்க் மட்டும் chatல போட்டுறீங்களா? Thank you.
லைவ்ல போயாச்சு லிங்க் ஷேர் பண்ணிட்டேன் சாட்ல.
Okay.
Tony sir, you are from your Sydney home?
No, I'm from Kerala. I'm in Kerala.
Oh, the other day we
Still in
spoke.
Kerala.
Yeah. I'm seeing that 6:30 whose time I was thinking, I was wondering. I checked immediately Sydney time. Okay, nice.
But I think the 6:30 was for the US people who are joining from.
Yeah. If you are in Kerala, then we should meet often. Either I should come or you should come. Okay. I think that we are online. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we can get started. Good morning, good evening, everyone. So, thanks all for attending this last session. We have had 4 sessions earlier on this reading forum, reading the Early Indians book authored by Mr. Tony Joseph. Let me give a small background on what this forum is. So, we have started this forum as the Journey of a Civilization reading group in November 2022. Since then, this group has read the Journey of a Civilization by Mr. Balakrishnan thoroughly. We had done 10 classes altogether discussing various details of the book. And then it so happened 2024 happened to be the centenary year of Indus discovery. So there has been multiple celebrations. So this group also wanted to do something on that front. So we started this study circle. Earlier it was a reading circle. Now it became a study circle. So it became a JOC study circle. As part of it, we had some lectures. One was given by me on my travel to Lothal and Dolavira. And subsequently, Professor Raj Mutharasan had talked about the genetic heritage of current day Tamils. It was a very extensive and well-received lecture throughout the globe, I should say, because it was very well viewed in YouTube as well. So we had 2 lectures from him. And then the third activity, what we had taken up is reading this book, Early Indians book, because this is a book which talks about not just history only with facts, but also encompasses all the scientific advancements which happened over time, namely the archaeological advances and the genetic advances, linguistic advances which happened in this field to understand who Indians we are. So again, in this forum, as I told earlier, we had taken 4 sessions. 4 Saturdays, we sat together to read all the 4 chapters one by one. Now we have the 5th session, which is a Q&A session. And the author himself has kindly agreed to be with us to clear our doubts and enhance our understanding better. So, firstly, I welcome Mr. Tony Joseph for kindly accepting our invitation and being here this early morning and being ready to enlighten us. We welcome you, sir. And then we also have a group of experts over here. So we have Mr. R. Balakrishnan, indologist, great Tamil scholar who is with us. He has been enlightening us with lots of talks as well as his books. So we also have him today, so it adds a pleasure to us. We also have other members of this forum. So I welcome you all. So before we get into the actual Q&A session, may I request Mr. Balakrishnan to say a few words about this book and its impact over understanding India's history.
Yeah, Bama, I was under the impression that that is after Tony Joseph's remarkable talk, I would make a small statement. I'm afraid that I should not end up with it.
If you want to
Welcome,
defer it,
Tony.
maybe we can defer it.
Fine, fine. Either way, then I will make it further shorter instead of question. I think we are very fortunate and happy to have this kind of session. The early Indians' beauty is that it's written by basically. I particularly underline this fact that it's not written by any academician who spent his 40 years in that kind of in a chair or in a kind of a position, but it comes from an independent researcher and an independent, it's basically from a journalist. And then, so that is seen in the every sentence of this book. That's the first sense I had it. Second thing, this book actually made a paradigm change in the sense that there's three type of kind of writers in indology. Indology is an open ground for everybody. A lot of people play. And then one is about a very serious, tight-lipped scholars who basically write for the peer-reviewed journals, and then it's read among themselves, and people, and basically it's more important that whether it is what type of magazine you write and other kind. So not many people reach that. That means what you want to create an overall impact, it's in either way. But there is a positive to that. It's a very moderated and very measured and very respectable material normally. But then third group of people, before coming to the Tony Joseph types, are the kind of, in a way, I am and all trying to belong to that kind of group. And then another group basically write about the indology, for that matter, any subject under the earth on WhatsApp. Or they kind of in Facebook and postings, and people like Money One and have all the time to answer, and sometime I watch that. So they spread all kind of rumors as a fact. So second, it's a non-serious people come with lots of statement. In between, somebody has to speak the sense. In the sense that the more than the important, equally as the content, what I liked about this book, the way it nails it. They nails the truth and raise the question first. Forget about even nailing the truth otherwise. Raise the right type of question. I think that these are the questions which is discussed in this book. Actually, I have at least familiar with last 35 years. Where these questions are not new. But the way the questions are positioned and the new evidence is gathered, that is how this book is become a remarkable one. Like, for example, did the Aryans migrate to India? It's as simple as that. The questions that Aryan migration theory, Aryan immigration theory, Max Muller coming and accusing, Indra stands accused, and somebody comes and releasing him on bail, or that somebody come with a horse, or somebody comes to that it's the entire Sanskrit and Indo-European language went out of India, then there is an out of India theory, then into India theory, then the word migration and the invasion is so much worried about it. Okay, even people like us, we don't talk about invasion any further. We are all talking about migrants, all are migrants. But the way this book raises the question straight away and gives two choices. Either the language, Indo-European language, went out of India, or it came into India, and analyzes. I am just giving an example for that. This is a book which actually ultimately reached the people. I consider the success of this book is ultimately the test of the pudding is eating, like from Gurcharan Das to Vivek Devrai to Ravi Korisetter. Some of them I know that they would be very Sheldon Pollock, very economical about their word and what they write, and Romila Thapar and Michael Witzer and all. And all of them welcome this book. That is it doesn't need an endorsement, but the fact remains that this book has brought a new understanding. On one side, Yuval Noah Harari and David Rich and other people, and then Vagish Narasimhan and Vasant Sindes of the world, when they talk about a certain aspect. So putting everything together, a bird's eye view has to be given. And Tony Joseph has done it remarkably. Only one, probably I would have made it after his talk. I felt, Tony, actually, when you wrote this book, I think that you spent many years in it, and ultimately it saw the light in 2018. We met after that also around 2019. You came to my book release of JOC 2020. We met again in Delhi. But then the fact remains that it's actually our failure. I know that Sundar or somebody from the RMRL must be there. I am here as a head of the Indus Research Center. Way back in 2010, we came out with a very important evidence of the what we call as a cavity complex. In many places, you have mentioned about the southward and then Askoparpola and even Airavada Mahadevan's basically taking position like Agathian, and how the place names are used. So we came out with in 2010, but we didn't really go to the town. I must say that it is basically our own engagement with as a full-time civil servant. But then 2012, it was published by the RMRL Bullet Channel. Again, that is a closed circuit kind of magazine. I must say it is basically our failure to outreach. And then it came out in the Harappa.com. Ultimately, 2016, Sindhuveli Panbat in Dravida Adithalam book. Of course, it's a Tamil book. You could not have had access. And then 2019, JOC. And finally, before the death of my mentor, Airavada Mahadevan, his last article in the Convoyers Memorial thing, it's basically again talks about the paradigm where he repositioned the Agastya thing, where earlier he used to call Agathya is main person from the interior. After my presentations and books and writings, he repositioned and saying that that particular symbol, it represents not only interior, it represents the place in the western side. So where I spoken about the east-west dichotomy of the Indus town planning. So then that was his last article where he placed the whole thing, and he was very generous to make a very generous mention about in the very opening para. I think that I earnestly look forward in your future revised thing, because the development which has taken place in the interest of the subject which you are talking about. Of course, I consider that to be our not reaching out to make it to the public eye. So because a person like me, like you, write and read and then publish and feel happy about that. Thank you very much, and looking forward. It would have been a post your talk, but then Bama didn't call me. Hope I have not taken much of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aya. So let me. So,
You're muted, Joseph.
no, I think he's talking to someone.
You're muted.
Bama, you suddenly called me. I didn't even switch on my camera when I spoke.
You were on, but for some time you went off.
No.
So, okay, so let's now move to the next part of the session. So, Professor Raj Mutharasan.
No, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But
Can
you are
you hear me
muted.
now?
Yes, we can hear you, but
No, I just want. Yeah.
I think you have a bandwidth problem.
No, you've now muted, Joseph.
Tony is muted. Yeah.
Yeah. Now
yeah. No, thank you, Mr. Balakrishnan. And I also say that it is the Journey of Civilization book that put all that brought it out for me in such a powerful manner. And then I went back and read the port route and things like that. So that's all when it came together. But it happened later after my.
Yeah, I know. It's a 2019 yours, 2018.
Correct. So I mean, I'm highly thankful for all the work that you have done and and I think it's a powerful what shall I say, capture of the migration history. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so the next session will be moderated by Professor Raj Mutharasan. To quickly tell about Professor Raj Mutharasan, he is a emeritus professor of Drexel University. He is a chemical engineer, and he is the founding president of FETNA. But he has also worked on Spencer Wells genetic program, namely the National Geographic program. So over 30 years of experience, in addition to his profession, he has over 30 years of interest in this archaeology, genetics, and Tamil literature. So he is, as most of us know him, he is a man full of knowledge. So he would be leading this session. Over to you, Rajaya.
Thank you, Bama, and for all the hard work you have done. First of all, it is indeed my pleasure and honor to present to the group through Tony Joseph. Let's welcome him. Before I get into a sort of a formal description, his book is a pivotal work, meaning he delves into prehistoric migration that has shaped the genetic, linguistic, and cultural landscape of the Indian subcontinent, drawing upon research from disciplines such as history, archaeology, anthropology, linguistics, and population genetics. So the dimension where he delved into in order to write his composition is really cuts across about 5-6 disciplines. Most people would be good in population genetics. They would not know much about linguistics. Most people will know about genetics, but not anthropological background of folks in India. But he has mastered, and he says he worked 6 years at it in order to bring this to a completion. And I'm sure he is still working on it to refine it further, because there are new data has come to the fore in the last few years. Anyway, before I get into the questions, prior to his foray into authorship, Joseph had an extensive career in journalism, and that shows in the way he composed his book. He actually met with the authors who wrote the research papers. That's not typically a researcher such as I would write a review article. We just read and then write, while he reads and then meets with the authors, debates, discusses, and perhaps even fights within quotes, and then converts that body of knowledge that emerges out of that interaction and reduces it into a form that you and I, ordinary people, can understand this complex subject. So in that regard, he has done a wonderful job of compiling this book. So his journalism is his core, and it shows when you read his book, and that spanned over many decades. He served as the editor of Business World magazine starting in 1998, I understand, and held positions including features of editor of Economic Times, it's a well-known journal, and the associate editor of Business Standard. His writings have also appeared in publications such as Outlook India, Quartz, Life Mint, and The Hindu, which most of us are familiar with. In addition to his editorial roles, Joseph co-founded and chaired MindWorks Global Media Services and stayed on it until 2018. I think the book must have made him choose between what he wanted to do. He's based in New Delhi and describes himself as an atheist, like many of us in this group. Early Indians has received critical acclaim and has been translated into multiple Indian languages, reflecting its widespread impact and contribution to the discourse on India's ancient past. And so in terms of that concludes my formal introduction of Tony Joseph. Now we are going to get into the questions. The way we thought we will do this is the questions have been compiled into a slide format. I'll project the question and perhaps read a little bit of that question, and then Mr. Joseph, if you could answer, that'll be good. Usually, since there are about 15 questions, we'll perhaps entertain one short question after each. Otherwise, for clarification, not for a lecture, and then move forward and finally leave the last 10-15 minutes for discussion, where we'll have a free-for-all type of a situation. So that is the format we're going to follow. So let me then project on the first. Any questions, Mr. Joseph?
No, that sounds absolutely fine to me.
Okay.
Then Professor Sir, that means my understanding is that today is only question answer session. Okay, probably it's my failure. I didn't know that. I was looking forward for a a talk
Lecture.
followed by question. Either way, it makes all the more easier. And I still have the right to ask one more question also.
Okay, the first question. You note in chapter 3 that the dominant language of Harappan civilization was Proto-Dravidian, and it may have reached South India around 2800 BCE, which is well before the Harappan peak period. That's on page 149 of your 2018 edition. Question is, what type of evidence enabled you to indicate this? There are indirect references in that same paragraph citing northern Karnataka, where herders from Indus Valley settled, but I didn't see concrete things. I wonder whether you could elaborate a little bit, Mr. Joseph.
Yes, this is absolutely a fascinating question and a very good question. And it started me, I'll first talk about started on this issue, and I actually elaborated on this in my talk at the centenary celebrations of the Indus Valley civilization in Chennai in January. What started on me was that the common assumption or the perception that a large number of Harappans migrated out of northwestern region of India after their civilization declined and then mixed with populations. And that's what explains the current spread of genetic ancestry. There is a problem with that. This is the problem. The problem is that if this is correct, then it means, at least as far as southern India is concerned, I am sure there are other kinds of problems elsewhere also, but at least as far as southern India is concerned, this would mean that the migration from Harappan region first had nothing to do with the spread of agriculture, because the spread of agriculture happened much earlier. The beginnings of agriculture go back almost 1,000 years earlier, which is fine. But what's the problem with that? One problem with that is that the way a language spreads, the primary way a language spreads is by the spread of agriculture. There are other ways the language spreads also. Why is that? Because when people take to agriculture, their population grows very dramatically compared to hunter-gatherers, their earlier lifestyle. Hunter-gatherer populations grow very slowly. Settled farming populations grow very rapidly, which means they migrate and they spread and they take their language with them. And that's the most common and primary way of language spread. So if you say the Harappan migration from northwestern India to the south happened after the Harappan civilization declined, then it means they did not have much to do with the initial spread of of whatever language it was that the agricultural spread caused. Then it raises the question of what was that language, and if it was not Dravidian. Or the second problem is that if you look at the Proto-Dravidian as constructed from the existing Dravidian languages of South India, and this has been done by the earliest vocabulary that has been done by Southworth and David McAlpin. It suggests that the earliest vocabulary shows a society engaged in animal husbandry with some knowledge of agriculture. Now, if the Harappan civilization, if the Harappan people moved down after the Harappan civilization declined, one would expect their language to have had a fair number of urban words as well. But in this reconstruction of the Proto-Dravidian at the earliest stage, that's not there. So, which raises the question, two questions. Who were the people who spread agriculture in the south? If this was not the Harappans who came after the civilization, as we said, it can't be. Who were the people then who spread agriculture? Now, for that, first we look at the archaeological evidence, which suggests that by around 3000 BCE or so, we know that people in the Krishna Godavari region in the upper South India, in Karnataka, they had started cultivating millets and pulses. The first crop package that we have in South India. That's around 3000, around that period. Then around 2800 BCE, we see the first evidence of ash mounds, which is sometimes said as the first monuments of southern India. Ash mounds which spread across the Deccan. And that goes back to
The problem.
2800 BCE. What that says is that by around 2800 already there, because these ash mounds are being burned over some annual festival or something of that kind for centuries. That's why the mount suggests it is significant. Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see your name,
Yeah.
but not your
Yeah.
face.
I have started the video 1 minute. Now?
Yes. Yes, yeah, perfect.
So the short answer is ash mounds seem to suggest there were settlements that were contemporaneous with 2800 BCE. But
Correct.
those have actually been dated by ASI or some agency.
Correct. This date is have been dated. So why is this ash mounds important? Because they indicate the coming together of a crop package or domesticated plants with domesticated animals, which is absolutely critical. That's the full agricultural package, and that's what spreads agriculture. So for the first time, these ash mounds and around that region we can see is when the full agricultural package formed in South India. Then that raises the question, who brought the domesticated animals? Now, by Dorian Q. Fuller, who is the most leading authority on archaeobotany, especially in India, has said that domesticated animals were introduced into South India, especially goat and sheep, etc., because they were domesticated in the northwestern. There is some disagreement over cattle were domesticated or not, because Alchin says, based on cave art, that the cattle in South India was domesticated in India, but there is no actual physical evidence of this. And we know that Zebu cattle was domesticated in northwestern India first. So there is a great sense in saying that the domesticated animals were brought to the south by pastoralists from the northwestern region, who were, and we also have the way that the route that they could have come, because there's a grassland that connects Gujarat and northwestern India to South India. So if you consider the possibility that the pastoralists from northwestern India, who were part of the Harappan civilization region, remember that all of Harappan people who lived in the Harappan civilization region are not urbanites. There are a very large number of others.
Villages.
There are farmers, there are pastoralists, and as you know, even today, there is Brahui, a pastoralist tribe that speaks a Dravidian language in northwestern India or Pakistan today. So they would have been pastoralists, and if they brought the domesticated animals to South India, then what we are saying is that they would have brought a Proto-Dravidian language along also with them. And the people who spread, they would have mixed with the earlier first Indians who were creating the first domesticated crop package in South India, and they would have mixed, and it is this mixed group that would have spread both agriculture and also the first Dravidian language in India. So that's so it fits with the linguistic evidence of what the earliest vocabulary is, It fits with the evidence of ash mounds and the beginning of agriculture, and it spread because we can see the ash mounds, and along with the agriculture spreading by around 2200 BCE, agriculture has spread to a substantial area. And if you don't have this, then it is difficult to explain how all of this happened, because then you have to distinguish or separate out agricultural spread from language spread.
Tony,
Broadly,
Joseph, you have actually very clearly clarified that the spread of basically human, particularly languages, has been a multi-layered migration. The migration being a continuous process. You were mentioning that, you are clearly mentioning that there was a kind of a Proto-Dravidian earlier existence, then again agriculture mixing, and then when it comes to the post-Indus migration or post-Harappan migration due to prolonged drought and all, you are mentioning that it's basically that represent a more urban form, probably resulted in very urbanite literature, in Sangam literature and all. It's basically you are putting it as a multi-layered migration, which is a fact actually, that stands good for any linguistic group in India.
Correct. So that is the second migration. My answer should have included the second migration as well, because that's the first migration that brought the first time a northwestern Harappan ancestry, and the language was brought. But obviously there were significant migrations after the Harappan civilization declined, and that also brought migrations. But when those migrations came, they were coming to a region that is already familiar with Dravidian language. In fact, we can go further from there. We can say that we know that the earliest evidence of ash mounds, etc., is in northern parts of the South India. Northern South India, Karnataka,
Karnataka, Maharashtra.
Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, those regions. So it comes later to the southern parts, including Tamilakam. So if you say that there was another migration that happened after the Harappan civilization, it is not surprising that that second migration would have impacted southern India more, because that would have been where cultivable land and other things would have been more easily available, not yet fully populated, not yet populated as much as in other regions. It makes sense. There's also a second factor. That is literary. That is the importance of Agasthian or Agathian in the Tamil literature. And this could, as Aravadam Mahadevan had pointed out, I wouldn't go into these things, would be linked to the second migration after the Harappan civilization declined. So this would explain also the significance of the second migration, and which bringing in a more urban form of language, which takes things to a second level. What is interesting is that we have a tradition that we had grammar began in Tamilakam much earlier than anywhere else. I mean, not anywhere else meaning any other so the very long tradition. Now, when does grammar begin? Or where people start worrying about language? If you go by the Panini, or there were people writing in Sanskrit grammar even before Panini, but you would see that one of the provocations for thinking about language and grammar would have been the fact that there was a difference between the language that was spoken by then and the language that was preserved in the oral Vedic literature. And it is that difference that starts people thinking about language and grammar and everything else that comes. Now, if you say post-Harappan literature, there was a migration that brought them to a region where there already was a Dravidian language presence. And you can imagine the language that they brought the second time would have deviated significantly from what people are speaking in the South today. I mean, at that time, would have started thinking about language, and the same processes that led to grammar and related language-related concerns in the north would have led to similar things in Tamilagam. So when you look at this two-stage migration to the south, it then fits all the evidence that we have in terms of language spread, agriculture spread, language development, and it also links with the next question that you have raised, which is about iron in South India. So I will hold that until that you put up the next question, and I will answer that. I'll connect that with the iron discovery.
Okay, let's move on. We have 14 questions. So
Oh my God.
we have spent 30 minutes on question 1. So,
that is because this is the question which is
no. I think you have now alerted us. Just this question is enough to write a major essay, at least, in order to get this information across. What you had just described is far more than what is in your book, obviously, right?
Yeah, correct.
So that's something for you to consider, or somebody else in the audience. Let me go on to the second question. Iron Age dating. Please share your insights on this discovery as it predates the mature Harappan phase.
Yeah.
We'll try to keep it brief.
Yeah. This is absolutely fascinating. It is linked to the first question. The earliest iron datings, if I am not mistaken, goes back to 2800 BCE at the middle rate. It goes back even further than that. But if you take the middle of the range that they're given, it's about 2800 BCE. But there's an absolutely stunning fact. This is one of the earliest discoveries of smelting iron anywhere in the world.
That's right. Anywhere.
Anywhere in the world. But it raises a question, serious question. See, smelting iron requires far more sophistication than smelting copper. Copper melts around 1000 degrees Celsius. Iron melts at 1500 degrees Celsius. So you need to know control temperature, you need far higher technology and understanding than smelting copper. That's why all over the world, it's usually seen that the copper age comes first, and then Chalcolithic or copper age comes first, and then the iron age. But here in South India, we are saying we have no evidence of copper smelting anywhere, because there are not enough commercially viable copper ores. So we are saying we just jumped straight away.
That is the.
Yeah, it's a glitch.
Yeah. He's got bandwidth issues, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. From without going through the copper age, we just how did that happen? How can you explain this? And like migration from the north to the south. So people who are already familiar with the copper smelting come to South India, where they find there is no copper ore. What do? The only option you have is then to upgrade your skill and learn how to use iron ore, which is available in plenty. So that's the answer. So the answer to the first question also answers this peculiar situation, the only place in the world perhaps where people straight away went to iron smelting without going through the first stage of copper smelting. So that's my short comment on the iron age dating.
But Tony, without taking a second, I will take it. There is a misconception where people normally take it's an iron versus copper kind of conversation. They have a tendency to say that finding an iron 30 years or 100 years before, because the pyramid has been constructed without iron. And then in the Euphrates Tigris has been achieved without iron. The walls of Mohenjo-daro have been constructed without iron. So notwithstanding, it's a metallurgy as a kind of knowledge these people had in Indian subcontinental, seemed to be a same group of people, but in no way actually it undermines the either importance of the South Dravidian or the Tamil antiquity, nor the importance of the Mohenjo-daro. In fact, I have written a piece of article in Ananda Vigadan subsequently, because when people were trying to put that as if Mohenjo-daro and Adichanallur were the horse race, which is not a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not talking about all that you said is correct. I agree with that. I did not get the last sentence. What did you say?
No, in the sense that there is a tendency, say that the superiority, because in no places in all over the world, the sequence is not followed. There are places where the people have moved into iron without going through the copper. Okay, in Indian context, it has happened both. Sangam literature is the only literature which very clearly give the contextualize the use of copper and iron in a two different way. The iron being the agriculture and the instruments used, the weapons used in the warfare, but then it puts the copper in the context of the urban constructions. So I very clearly say that it's one and the same kind of people who are the involved in this.
Yeah, but you agree that there is not enough copper ore
Yeah,
in the
naturally.
south.
Yes, yes.
And
So it's a-
therefore not enough copper smelting.
So the drive towards iron was because copper was not available, or some
Correct.
metal, right?
So what
So
you're
that's-
saying is that if you assume that there are people, if you assume and it tells you, it gives you the steps by which you reach a much higher technology of iron. Now, I do not know whether there are, I mean, you could be right. So these are, at this stage, you could be right in the sense that there are other places in the world where people have moved to iron without going through the copper stage. And without borrowing from elsewhere, because in Tamil Nadu, what you're saying is that this is the first time. This is the first time that there could be places where iron happened without copper, but they borrowed from somewhere. But here there is no place to borrow. You have to invent iron smelting, because this is one of the first places in the world. So if you're saying they invented straight without borrowing and without going through the copper smelting first stages, then it's possible. But if you look at the antiquity of iron, the paper that the state government has, Tamil Nadu government has brought out recently in January or February, you can see the technology that is required to, it goes into detail on that in terms of raising the temperature and things like that. So it is difficult to see that people not being familiar with copper smelting at a lower stage before getting into a technology for the first time in the world without borrowing, inventing it. So, but yeah, if there are other places that have also the similar thing has happened, then that needs. But as I said, this is all at this stage. This is all you're trying to fit evidence to what is available. It's possible that there are newer evidence comes and we find that there is actually significant copper smelting in South India also, and that changes. Then that would invalidate what I just said. If there is enough evidence of significant copper smelting in South India, not just in Tamil Nadu, but in the rest of South India, then all this is not necessary.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Harappans were an advanced civilization. When they migrated south and east, why did they not recreate what they left behind? Please share any thoughts you might have. We realize this goes a bit beyond your book, but we are very interested in your perspective. Your answer to your first question was it was an earlier migration, and therefore this might have been a different situation. But please share your thoughts, Mr. Joseph.
We can only guess, and this is my guess, my perspective on it. What happened? So let us break the migrations into migrations that happened towards the east, that is not in North India itself, and the migrations that happened towards the south for easy understanding. Migrations in the north itself, towards the east. What you're saying is that there was significant cultural shift that happened soon after the Harappan civilization declined. There was new pastoralist people who came from the steppe, who were in a dominant position in northern India, and which we know from the fact that the language shifted to Indo-European, Indo-Aryan languages. And that dominant lifestyle was pastoralist. That was not agricultural. That was not settled farmers. And we can see, in fact, when steppe pastoralists moved into Europe, there were already settled farmers there. We can see those lifestyle changing significantly into pastoral lifestyle. So that's what happens. There is a new lifestyle which is preferred, where people moving in their horse and wagons and things like that, with the large herds. And that's the new lifestyle. That's what everybody aspires to. That's what dominates, because they also dominate the settled farmers who might be in the regions, because these are more mobile. Farmers very often are sitting ducks for pastoralists. So as far as the North is concerned, there is a cultural shift that happened, and it would take centuries, almost a millennium, for the new people who came in to settle down and start farming. And that happens later, much later.
Around
So the answer
500.
to the question, why didn't they recreate what they left behind in the North, is that the culture changed in the North. Why didn't they do it in the South? Because there was no similar domination in the South by pastoralists or the steppe pastoralists. The answer one can think of is that it's a completely different region with completely different dynamics, because the crop packages that worked in northwestern India, which is essentially barley and wheat, doesn't work in the South. As we saw, the crop package in the South was millets and pulses. There are also other reasons. The entire Harappan structure is built on agriculture and trade. Both these things went away. And when you come to the South, agriculture changed. It will be years before, centuries before trade begins, which we can see significantly in the Sangam or the heroic poetry period much later. So this is one possible reason why recreation didn't happen. And the second, urbanization happened when agriculture took off in a major way in eastern India, in Magadha, the Magadha region. And that's when you see the empires rising, the Nandas, the Maurya, all of that happening. But that happened almost 1,000 years later. And this is the broad reason one can think of why it might have happened that way.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to the next question. Oops. So this is a long one. There are several settlements that were contemporaneous to IBC in Rajasthan. ASI excavation in 1981 indicates there are 3 towns. The residues were there. These were organized towns. The Ahar Museum at Udaipur contains the following description that's on the right-hand side, which shows there's a settlement which were dated as 3600 BCE to 1700 BCE. But similar things were they present, or they are yet to be discovered, or were they not present in Deep South, it's particularly in Tamil Nadu? The reason is these sites, these little towns, contained seal impressions, and they were in contact with BMAC, according to the residues that have been excavated. Any thoughts that you might have on this?
As we saw, I mean, it's not an Ahab-Banas civilization, it's an Ahab-Banas culture.
Yeah.
Or the
Rajasthan side.
Sipta culture in Maharashtra around the same time, after the Harappan, from where the Daimabad cultures, etc. Now, in the South, we know that from around 2800 BCE, we have agriculture starting up, which speeds up a little more by around 2200 BCE and things like that. We have not done a similar this culture in this part of Tamilagam. This slightly different culture in this part of Karnataka, slightly different in this part. I don't think from the South we have that kind of a classification. But it is clear that agriculture was spreading, settlements were beginning. Broadly, around the, towards the later parts, yeah. But I don't. To the best cultures in this manner, culture, of course you can, because there are similarities of crop package, similarities of practices, etc. So I don't know whether I have answered the question, but I don't think unless there are more discoveries, I don't think I can say more.
So this is still the reason why this thought came is I think there were sites as far as Maharashtra that have been listed as
Right.
contemporaneous to IVC,
Yeah.
and that is just less than 500 kilometers from where Kerala is located, or
Yeah.
where Tamil is located. And so
Yeah.
the possibility exists that there were also other settlements further south, but
Yeah.
and this question comes about because of although in the cities were few,
Yeah.
half a dozen,
Yeah.
but the Indus Valley civilization villages were in the hundreds. There were many.
Correct.
There were many that were feeding into the cities,
Yeah.
and that is where this question came up with.
Yeah, I think we may have more to discover, like the iron discoveries show that if that goes back as much as the datings show, then one would imagine that our agricultural beginnings should also go way back. But I think that one will have to wait for newer discoveries to happen. And with the Tamil Nadu government being as active and proactive as it is, I think we probably will we'll get more findings.
So Raj sir, I would like to just add, it's called to be termed as an archaeological apathy. In the sense that, as pointed out, till this iron was found, nobody knew it. And Kiladi, there is one ASI person came and clearly made an announcement. There is nothing more to dig. So, but digging is even now going on, and thousands of materials are found. Adichanalur report was not published for 19 years, and the court had to intervene. And Kiladi first and second report is yet to find its light of the day. Even now, it's waiting. So that means south of Daimabad, Archaeological Survey of India never made a wholehearted effort to dig it. Unless you dig it, then you have to wait for somebody to accidentally find it. So there has not been any organized effort to dig and find the truth, in spite of K.N. Dixit saying that in 1935. That's the essence of it. Future may hold some more truth.
So the answer is we have to wait.
Yes.
Yeah, archaeological apathy.
Yes.
Okay.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
The next question is, why did you end with the steppe people, calling them the last Indians, when there were many others who came after them?
Because the book was trying to see how do we understand the Indian population. And in terms of migrations that significantly affected Indian demography, that ends with the last migrants, that is the migrants from the steppe. There were lots of migrations that happened after that, but that did not change the demography, because compared to the population of India, the migrations that happened were small, did not leave a large people. In specific populations, you may find a little bit here, like the Jewish population of Kerala. You would find a little bit more of this than that, and specific groups. But when you look at the entire subcontinent as a whole, there's no other migration that significantly affected the population. You can say that, for example, the last migration, the Harappan ancestry is like all across. There's no population group that we know of that does not have Harappan ancestry. There are about 7 or 8 population groups in India that still don't have steppe ancestry, but you can, all of them in South India, but you can definitively say that almost all of the subcontinent does carry steppe ancestry. That can't be said about any of the migrations that happened later. For example, take the colonial migrations, most significant one, which impacted us culturally in such a huge manner. But did that leave behind a demographic mark? Did it change our demography? Not at all, because the number of people who related to the colonial migration are far too small compared to the population. So when you say the last migrants, I call them not last Indians, last migrants. it is the last migration that caused a significant
Major impact.
impact on Indian demography.
Major
And
impact.
I've also said that actually it is unlikely that there will be any migration in the future that
You did-
that will change this demography either. We might change the demography of others, though, but that's different matter.
You did include the migration from the east, from Myanmar, Cambodia, that people, but they had a small impact on the cultural features. There's more effect of them on the east, like in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh, but not as much on mainland or the main
But
part of
actually,
India.
when you say the last migrants, this includes them, because
Okay.
it's the first Indians, then the ancient Iranians, then the Austroasiatic speakers from the east, then the Arya. Yeah, Indo-Tibetan would come probably a little later. But as you said, that
you did
would be-
include it in your chapter 3.
Yeah.
And you obliquely suggested they brought rice cultivation to India, not directly, but
No, not really. Rice, I think, according to research that has been done, there have been what you call is a shifting rice cultivator. So it's a form of cultivation, but not necessarily rice. Rice was discovered in China as well as in India separately, but there is something that's at different times. But at one point of time, these two things came together, which gave a huge productivity boost to rice cultivation in India. And that might have happened sometime before 2000 BCE. But I think we need more work on this from archaeobotany, perhaps, to put more flesh on this.
okay.
Yeah.
Let me go to the next question. So are you planning a sequel, part 2, to your current book?
Yes, I'm well into it. The first book ends around 1500 BCE or so, when that's the last end of the last major migration. This book will look at the periods after that.
So it's in the
if
works,
The first
is
book
it?
was, pardon?
It's in the works. You're writing
It's
it
in the
now.
works, yeah. Yes,
Okay.
yes. So
Thank
the first one
thank
would
you.
look at the genetic formation. The second one will be more about cultural formation.
Wonderful. We look forward to it. Question 7. You note in chapter 3 that Chola, Chera, and Panti were brothers who lived together in ancient times. Chola, the advisor, Chera, the high officials, Panti, the commoner, Pandi. I wonder if you could elaborate, especially geographical location and timeline context. This is in
So
your
this is
chapter 3.
entirely, this is entirely from Airavada Mahadevan. I will suggest
Okay.
the paper that he wrote this in. This is the paper called Interpreting the Interscript, Dravidian Solution. Is Airavadam's paper which mentions this. And
Okay.
he's the mention of that they were brothers. He says the folklore that Chera, Chola, and Panti were brothers who lived together in one place in ancient times. That particular statement, Airavada Mahadevan puts to Caldwell, reprint 1961. Now, what Airavada Mahadevan has done, what he's saying, coming from about being the advisor, high officials, commoner, etc., is based on his attempt to decipher some of the Harappan signs, which he interprets as people inside the fort, people who are high officials in the citadel, and people who are living in the common areas for the commoners, which in the Harappan cities, you could see that. And he links these places to this Chola, Chera, Pandya. So it is not, what you're saying is that these are different people living in different parts of a Harappan city. So that's what he says. And you can read more about, it would be too complicated to go into his decipherment, but you can read more about in that particular paper of his.
Okay. Thank you. All right, this is a long question. This question is, there's a recent paper that reports using advanced analysis, a full genome sequence. Researchers at University of Cambridge found evidence of modern humans are the result of genetic mixing of two ancient populations who diverged about 1.5 million years ago. About 300,000 years ago, these two groups came back together, with one group contributing 80% of the genetic makeup of modern humans and the other contributing 20%. So if archaic humans, meaning hominins, I think that's what the person who's saying it, separated for more than 1.5 million years, can breed again together, is it likely that those modern hominins who came to ancient India may have bred with Homo erectus and or other archaic hominins already in India? Do we have any evidence of such ghost DNA exclusive to India? Given these findings, how do we consider Homo sapiens and Homo erectus as belonging to different species? There are too many questions there, but nevertheless, I'll let you interpret this.
I will start from the last questions. First, about mixing between the Homo sapiens who came to India and populations that preceded them. There's no genetic evidence, but is it something that you would rule out? I don't know. I don't think I would rule that out, because they did live together for a considerable period of time. If you're saying Homo sapiens arrived around 60 or 65 thousand years ago, and we know that the other earlier hominins were here for at least another 30,000 years. So I would think it is quite possible that we may find it in the future. So we will have to run these findings. How can we consider? That's a good question. But we still consider, but I think that's a question of nomenclature, classification. But the fact is, we still talk about Denisovans, we still talk about Neanderthals, even though we know that we interbred with them. So those classificatory issues, I think that is for the academics to battle over. But we know that these are different groups, but they were close enough to intermix. Now about the 1.5 million years ago question. Both with Neanderthals and Denisovans, our common ancestors go back about 60,000 years ago. So we had been separate for about 60,000 years ago, before 60,000 years, or sorry, not 60,000, 600,000. They had been, both Neanderthals and Denisovans had been separate from the line that leads to Homo sapiens, or put in other ways, we had a common ancestor only about 600,000 years ago. This one you're saying is more than double that. So it is about 1.5 million years ago. So there is no reason why 600,000, which we know happened, needs to be the limit. But how far can it go? I don't know. But it is surprising. But I mean, if that's what the research says, what we'll have to relook at, I think it is possible. And we will have to enlarge our idea of what's a species, what is not a species, and what interbreedability means to separating different groups as different species.
So the piece of information we have is, Neanderthal genome was published just a few years ago. Not all of it, but a substantial part of it. Given the fact that average Indian has more Neanderthal genes than an average European, it seemed to suggest that archaic humans were more present in India, and the Homo sapiens who came in 65,000 years ago did mate with them, and of course the result you see in current day Indians. They do exist, and so that argument seemed to be, that is, this person's question seemed to suggest They're not ghost DNA. They actually exist in current day Indians. If you take average person, he will have something in the orders of 10 to 100 genes that are of Neanderthal origin. And so, but it may be less, it depends upon the population. A detailed study hasn't been done as yet, as far as I know. But we know that the gradient, this is David Reich's publication, the Neanderthal genomic content of humans goes from just about 1% or so in Europe and goes all the way down to 8% in New Guinea. And we are somewhere in the middle. So we're in 2 or 3%, something like that. And so we harbor Neanderthal genes, an average Indian does, more so than an average European.
I think that's completely possible. I think that's a interesting and viable possibility and could have happened. And I think, and I'm sure probably we will find more evidence as we go along.
And you make an interesting observation, and I think it is in chapter 3, that during the Paleolithic period, middle period, almost the entire humanity was in India, because the number of Paleolithic sites in India are so many.
Yeah.
And so they were occupied with Homo erectus of some kind. And so there was a fair number of pre-hominins in India before the Homo sapiens came in 65,000 ago. And that partially explains why we have a higher Neanderthal genes compared to Europeans.
Yeah, quite possibly. Quite possibly.
Let me go on to the next question. Ancient DNA samples are available in very limited numbers in India. Available bone samples have degraded to the state of porous structure due to climatic conditions and are not usable for DNA analysis. This puts a restriction on understanding the genetic history of India at a high resolution. Are there any new advanced scientific methods that have been developed that can help analyze ancient DNA found in India?
I do not have any information on this, but I think perhaps I'm just guessing. Part of the solution may be, I don't know.
Yeah.
There have been 12.
Lot
many ancient DNA samples have been collected from Pakistan, from BMAC, from all these regions. But we have only one Rakhi Gadi sample collected after huge difficulty. I'm not sure that I would entirely say this is because of degradation. I would say maybe some of the problem is that you don't want those results.
Exactly.
The second part is that we have, for example, from Patnam, there are 12 ancient DNA samples. These are 2,000 years old. They have already been collected, analyzed. We know where they are from. About 4 of them are from India. Others are all from Mediterranean. This is Patnam was the ancient Muziris mentioned in the ancient records and in the Sangam poetry, or Muchiri. Patnam may have been at least part of it. So if you can get from Patnam 12, they got 13 samples. One they couldn't do anything with. So there are 12. So if you can get that much from Patnam 2,000 years ago, what's the great difficulty in finding? So I don't know. I don't know whether all of the problem is to do with technology.
Tony, actually, honestly, it's not about, number one, there is not much of a constructor effort to get obtained, or even there is a huge hesitation, even if you get it extract and thing. Then next step is to announce the result. And then we are in strange country where important person involved in the study and part of one of the signatories of a scientific article and conducts a press conference which speaks against that particular finding. Now, finally, recently, he has admitted that what he wrote in Science Journal was wrong. So what he said in the press conference is right. This is the kind of place we are living in.
But if I may remark about the Patnam, they were not able to do Y. They were able to do mitochondrial DNA. And of course, in a cell, you may have 50 to 100 empty DNA. On the other hand, there's only one Y. And therefore, they were able to do with with high concentration material, not with low concentration material.
Yeah.
The fundamentally scientifically, this is what the problem is. Ancient DNA gets broken up,
Yeah.
and they're broken up into different sizes with age. In India, they probably are very tiny.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, in Europe, they are fairly large.
Yeah.
So you have a problem of I'm trying to make it a question of dimensionality. You can put together reasonable sized DNA fragments back together. When you have so many tiny, we have difficulty. That requires a new approach, new technology that's yet to come to the fore, in my opinion.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get there also.
I think it'll come true because I think people are very creative in this field. Like 20 years ago, we couldn't do anything that we are now doing. I mean, it was impossible. We were dreaming that we could do this, but it was not available in the year 2000 until 2014. That's when it took off. So in a matter of 10 years, these things can change quite dramatically.
Exactly.
You can imagine now in the year 2000, your cell phone, how big was it?
Yeah.
And what capability it has compared to what your cell phone has now.
Yeah, you're right about that.
You can solve 5 simultaneous nonlinear partial differential equations on your phone, which you couldn't do 20 years ago. Anyway, let me go on to the next question. Graffitis found in Tamil Nadu have a strong resemblance to Indus Valley scripts. This indicates a strong relationship between Tamils and IVC folks. Since the graffitis found in Kiradi belong to a much later time, it appears to show continuity in the use of IVC graffitis in Tamil region. What would be the primary use cases of these graffitis, or what we can infer via this continuity?
See, if you let's look at what its use case would have been in Harappa, as has been surmised by many. Could have been related to trade, because we have seen these signs or scripts in the countries that they were trading with. So it is classifying or saying that this particular material or cargo is of this quality or belongs to somebody. It could have been used to meet the accounting or administrative needs of the cities, which a big city would be difficult to run without some script. But we don't have any evidence of it, because that may not have been used in seals. It might have been used in other ways which are perishable. And it would have, so these are two main things, right? There is administration, there is trade. We could also have been used as what will I say? That some have suggested that entry permits for different regions of the city. I don't know. I have no comment on that. But if these were all the uses that were there for Harappan civilization, when those go away, all those uses also go away, right? Because there's that much trade is not happening. That trade is gone, at least for many centuries. There are no large cities with that kind of administration requirements for another 1,000 years. So almost all of the use cases that you have for the Indus Valley are no longer relevant, because things have changed. But people who knew these things might still keep it alive in some form that is relevant to their new kind of life. What could that be? We know.
Okay. The follow-up question on this is, graffitis have been found in other ancient civilizations also, correct? If I remember right? Just scratches?
No, that, in my childhood, if you say steel plates, that people used to, scribble things, their names on those steel plates.
Scribble.
That buying steel plate was a big thing. So, of something they have, which is pottery, which is
but in the
so I will come to graffiti later.
Graffitis are mostly found in South India, and particularly in Tamil Nadu. And then, though for no reason, when it is found in the context of the Indus, though it is still undeciphered, it is called sign, Indus sign, the concept of sign. Whereas when it's found in the potteries in South India, particularly Tamil Nadu, it is called graffiti. I'm not talking about the Indus, the letter kind of thing. I'm talking even the undeciphered signs are called sign. And then when it in the context of the Tamil Nadu or South India is called graffiti, but in numerical sense, almost about 80% of the graffiti found in India is in South India, 90% of that in Tamil Nadu, and particularly almost all on the black and red ware pottery. Till in India, not even a single graffiti has been found on the painted grey ware, which I have been associating with the arrival of Aryans. Not even a single specimen has been found graffiti on the painted grey ware. PGW is something unheard of. And whereas almost 100% of that on the black and red ware pottery, which requires a separate investigation.
Absolutely. This had not struck me, but you're absolutely right. It is interesting that it had not struck me that there is no graffiti on any painted grey pottery. And in the recently released book, Indus Science and Graffiti Marks of Tamil Nadu by Government of Tamil Nadu, a fascinating book, which talks these percentages that and also makes the case for why it makes no sense to distinguish graffiti from script, because what is found in seals is considered script. But even in the Indus Valley, I think if it is found outside of seals, because Indus Valley, the civilizational region is a very large area. If it is found outside of the Harappan city seal and related things, I think that also is considered graffiti. But one is not sure that I think the book makes a case for not making these distinctions, which I agree with, which I think is a valid case. So to come back to the original question, primary cases until urban things start rising again, I think it would have been used as we know from later. It was used in donors, the earliest script in Tamil Nadu that has been used as for donors writing their names on gifts to Jain monks, for example, in some of the in near Madurai. So, and otherwise we can find it on pottery, which might have been for use, as I said, ownership, or this belongs to whom, and this is mine, or it would also have been used on hero stones. So these might have been the use cases until urbanization started happening again, is what I think. But it is interesting, it is possible, it is linked to the Indus Valley because it could suggest a continuation in altered circumstances.
Okay, let me move on. Prior to the recent genetic studies, widely held view was that the Aryans came in 2 waves, but I understand that the recent genetic studies point to trickling in of Aryans in small numbers and not just 2 waves as was assumed earlier. Is this true? If true, on the basis of what convincing evidence supports this inference? This is a very tricky question. I think the person saying, feel sorry for putting you in a tough spot. Hence, a detailed reply, if possible, would be appreciated.
I'll answer in 2 ways. One, from genetic study, the only thing that I think we can say is that migration happened in significant numbers, and this is the period during which it could have happened. And that period is 2000 to 1500 BCE. 2000 around 2000 BC, because before that we don't have evidence of steppe migrations coming down south. Why 1500 BC? We know that the genetic composition of the source population from where these migrations came changed, and after 1500 BCE, and that change is not reflected in India, which means after 1500 BCE, there's unlikely to have been any significant migration. So this is the only thing that we can say from genetic evidence. Roughly this period is when migrations happened. We can't say anything about, was it 1 wave, was it 2 waves, was it many waves? All that is assumed from other kinds of evidences. Like especially this 2 waves theory comes from essentially linguistic evidence of linguistic and cultural. I think it is both. of saying there is a significant linguistic differences between people who speak in Indo-Aryan languages to the east and the people who are in what can broadly be called Aryavarta, that is before the confluence of Ganga and Yamuna, etc. So if you can divide the broad northern India into Aryavarta and Greater Magadha, we are saying there are significant linguistic differences between these two regions, which suggests there were two migrations. And these linguistic differences are also shown culturally, because you will see in the ancient literature, the people who are writing in Aryavarta often demeaning and talking badly of people in Greater Magadha, going to the extent of saying they are not even Arya, but they do speak. They call themselves Arya. They speak Indo-Aryan languages. So all this suggests that there could have been multiple migrations, or at least, or as Grierson said in his, who has written the first linguistic survey of India, he is the one who suggested that there were two migrations that separate these two. Yeah, I don't know whether that is detailed enough reply, but yeah, genetically, I don't think we can talk about 2 or 3 migrations. We can only say this is the period when it happened.
It appears to have been a sort of a continuous thing, because the volume of people must have been large, because the linguistic changes, this is what linguists say, the language changes means there are a lot of people who came.
Correct. Either the number was large, or the migration was, what shall I say, they had far more control. So either it is peaceful, large number of migrations. Otherwise, you're saying it is a smaller number, then they ought to have had more control.
Or they were the rulers. Like, for example, the British ruled India for just 200 years, and you and I speak in English, right?
Correct.
There are people more literate in English than in their own native mother tongue.
Correct. Yeah.
We go on to the next question. Asko Parpala is of the opinion that the steppe pastoralists established themselves in BMAC before moving further south into the Indian subcontinent. As per recent genetic study, this is not the case. Please comment.
Yeah, the genetic evidence is based on the fact that they did find steppe ancestry coming through BMAC, as in not in the center. It doesn't suggest that they were in control of BMAC, but it does suggest that from the location from where they could collect this ancient DNA, suggests they did come through BMAC, but they were not. They did not control BMAC as Asko Parpala seemed to suggest. So there is indeed a difference between the two.
Yeah, Asko Parpala is before ancient DNA data became available.
Correct.
And now, of course, David Reich shows that there was only trace steppe ancestry in BMAC among the skeletons they examined. And so he draws the conclusion they didn't stay, they just passed through.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, what is the possible path of migration of steppe pastoralists into the Indian subcontinent? Is it possible to construct such a path, particularly because the migration took place in several waves over a long period of time?
Yeah, if you look at the map that was published,
David Reich's publication has this map.
Yeah, in the main paper, they show the migration route that they think, which is called the inner. It has the particular name, inner mountain.
Yeah, he concludes that they came through Hindu Kush, not through the Iranian plateau.
But they call the inner Asian mountain corridor. It goes through Altai and things like that, and comes through Hindu Kush and BMAC, etc. I mean, BMAC touching through. So that map that you can find in that paper.
Okay.
But sir, can we say that from the common source of steppe, they travel in almost in all direction, particularly towards west and down little south, then again taking a west route, and also in the Central Asian route. The reason is that there is the same sources gone via Azerbaijan and Iran into the other side also. Of course, the people who came to India must have taken one more specific route like Hindu Kush route. But the fact remains that the spread of the steppe population has been either both ways. And in the process, the spread of Indo-European as well.
Yeah, I would think that's correct.
The map David Reich publishes shows the pathway into India was Hindu Kush, but in 800 BCE, they actually traveled via the Iranian plateau all the way up north to where the northern Euphrates Valley. And of course, it says 800 BCE, but we very well know the Mitanni letters of 1100
Yeah,
BCE.
exactly.
So there is some movement towards that direction too, but that path, I'm not sure that is very well established. Okay, we'll go on to the next question. 13, what is the possible path of migration? Oh, I think this is the same thing. Yeah, I'm of the opinion that we should look for evidence of the earliest Aryan migrations from Sibri and Perak, about which you mention in the book. Any contrary views? These
No,
are located.
So I'm not sure when you say look for evidence in these places. I mean, I have nothing to comment on this. I would agree with that. But the thing is, what kind of evidence are you looking for? My comment would be slightly off tangent, which is essentially to say that archaeological evidence of pastoral movements are extremely difficult to find. It's far easier to find evidence of settled populations. But when you're masterless, you don't create mounds, you don't create it, so you move on. So you can't expect to find too many archaeological pieces of evidence. And the second thing is that these people, they move. The people who are pastoral keep on moving. They don't keep pottery. So it's a fascinating case in Western Europe when the steppe people moved in. The first evidence that they find in Europe, the archaeological evidence, is spotted ware, over which there was a lot of debate in the previous century of what these migrations, not migrations, etc., etc. But the point is, spotted ware, which is a kind of pottery which is associated with movement of the steppe pastoralists, there is no evidence of spotted ware in steppe pastoralist societies. They don't have it. But at the same time, when they come into an agricultural society and into settled people, the first evidence that we find is spotted ware. So how does that happen? It's because these pastoralists had unbreakable kind of wooden or leather kind of carriers to carry milk or other things. So the settled people had pottery. So they designed their pottery now, when after the intermingle, on the designs that the steppe pastoralists had. So essentially a new thing came into being. It is not that the pastoralists brought with them potted ware pottery. Why I say this is that the difficulty of finding archaeological evidence, because people often ask, hey, where is the evidence that they came from? Pastoral movements is very difficult to find archaeological evidence because they don't stay in one place, which is what is necessary for you to accumulate archaeological evidence over a period of time. So that's it.
Okay, let's go to the next question. In some cases, the archaeological evidence does not match with genetic studies. Should we not go for a holistic understanding rather than focus solely on genetic evidence? Please share your views on this.
I'm completely in agreement with this. So, I mean, my entire piece work has been on putting together evidence from multiple sources. And I absolutely think you should not go alone with genetic evidence. And I think the overwhelming evidence from all sources suggests that migrations shaped human civilizations over the millennia, and that played as big a role in the shaping of the Indian civilization as well. So I'm not sure where if there are any specifics about what archaeological evidence contradicts genetic studies or other evidence, then one can look at specific things. But in general, with the sentiment expressed in this state, I am in full agreement.
Usually, generally, we take more than one evidence. When all three different evidences, triangulation is a general concept in science. If three different approaches give you the same answer, it must be close to the truth. Not always the truth, close to the truth. The reason is, as new data become available, you may revise whatever you come to a conclusion. And so it's the proper approach is to include all. There is no doubt about it. But contradictions always occur because sometimes, for example, the pottery story, I think Bala Aya will be able to elaborate further. I think Ramakrishna often says, if you see this particular pottery, it belongs to this time, is an opinion often expressed by some scholars, but that may not be the case also, right? Let me go on to I think probably the last question. I think when you refer to a lot of evidence that is in your text, in your book, to what extent your preoccupied thoughts influence it? That is, are you biased? He or she is asking. In my case, either I get carried away by different theories or I struggle to arrive at a neutral conclusion. I need a few tips regarding it. This is a big, very wide question.
Preconceived ideas should not drive writing, and this is one of the reasons I don't commit to a book when I start on I don't commit to any publisher a book when I start on it, because I'm starting the research. I don't know where it will go. I follow what the evidence comes up with. So you should follow where evidence leads you, no matter what you would like the evidence to be. So there could be inklings or what shall I say? You could have intuition that this story doesn't gel, and I think this could be the explanation. That's a starting point. So it can be a starting point to have an intuition to start your research. But the research may tell you that what you thought is a fine, good intuition actually is not borne out by facts. Or you might say, actually, there is a lot more. This is interesting. Let me follow this up further. But no preoccupied thoughts or what I call intuition should play a bigger role than this. It should just be the start of finding the evidence, and you should go where evidence leads you. And if you have not come to a conclusion, either you have not done enough research, or there is not enough evidence as yet. You need to wait. So more than that, what can one say?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Joseph. That is the last question. So we'll now open it up to the entire forum. If there's anybody who has a question, please put your hand up. You will be able to see.
We don't see anyone.
So far, we have done a very detailed discussion.
Yeah.
Mr. Joseph, very detailed. And,
In fact,
we're
this
really
is a first
fortunate that you're able to detail out many of these issues. That's wonderful.
No, both of you deserve actually. Bama coordinated very well, and Professor Raj Muthurshan, you are being a very well-informed person in this field. You could actually collate all these questions and concern. Must hats off to Tony Joseph for the patiently taking all these questions and throwing further light on this subject.
Sridhar has a question. Sridharan, you may unmute yourself. Yeah, we can stop sharing right here.
Yeah, so I have one question. I have a question regarding the background. First, cotton cultivation. Can you please explain that? You mentioned in that book. First ever cotton cultivation.
Yeah, but it is based on very thin evidence. It's of it is likely that there was, but I think from what I remember, it is based on a thread, cotton thread that was found linked to some ring or something like that. But there is great reason to think that there was cotton because it has always been the trade. I mean, one of the in later trade as well. Cotton has been an important part of trading relations, even during much later in the South as well. So I don't think I have much more to say than this, but the book mention is based on presence of a cotton thread, as far as I remember, in one of the discoveries, one of the excavations that was conducted.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Ananta Krishnan, you may speak up. First, unmute yourself, please. Or தூங்கிட்டாரா?
இல்ல தூங்கிருக்க மாட்டாங்க.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, my question is very general in nature. I see all these YouTube talking about the decipherment of the Indus Valley symbols, mostly some of them politically motivated and not really substantiated or peer-reviewed. What will be your comment with respect to that?
I don't know how many decipherments there have been. There have been maybe 100, 200. Almost every season brings up a new decipherment. Obviously, this is all to say bluntly, it's bullshit. And don't take it seriously. If it is deciphered, it will be. And most of these things, they will not even say. They will say decipherment. They will go pages and pages and pages and pages of how this was arrived at. But they will never highlight. This is my decipherment of, let's say, the Dholavira signboard.
There is a glitch.
Yeah.
This is what it says. They won't. Why? Because it would be mostly nonsense. And if anybody said, if they highlighted, this is what my decipherment. So they would write reels and reels and reels without coming to the crux. Don't.
To chip in,
And it will
Mr.
create headlines all over the world, not just in India, somebody writing all over the world. People will jump. That's the impact decipherment, actual decipherment of the Harappan script will be, not somebody writing something on Twitter.
It doesn't matter actually, Mr. Anandakrishnan and Tony Joseph. I must say, after the announcement of the $1 million question, purposely made, now minimum telephone calls I get from different parts of the world and particularly different parts of the countries, minimum 2 calls. Okay, then we tell them that you make a presentation and a thing. And claimants are very bizarre, I'll tell you. You won't, but in a way, this announcement actually nailed it in such a way that if you are so serious that you have deciphered, please come and really make a presentation. Like recently, many people have made a presentation. We all listen to that and take the money. So then after that, people have really a little bit, okay, but see, even people are suggesting, if you are so sure about it, why don't you make a claim? So because the claims are so much from both sides, as Mr. Anandakrishnan rightly pointed out, it is nothing but politics, or even out of their own curiosity, or some of them I have come across, they actually believed that actually they have deciphered. They are not able to sleep, I'll tell you. And then they are not able to sleep. And they say that, sir, I have deciphered. And then it comes from the different parts of Tamil Nadu. They claim that what is everything written is Tamil. And he reads that it's somebody says that it's a Namashivaya is written, I have read it. And somebody says that Cheran, Cholan, Pandya, all kind of thing. And then another person from America says that he has read the entire Vedic thing in the Indus Valley script. So that means because it's like a WhatsApp and the YouTube, and these are the basic channel. People like me did not really get into that field at all, because that after 30 years or 40 years, the brevity and in the absence of the bilingual script, it's going to be a tall order. So that is the reason we left with a huge announcement of the prize money. It hangs there, and so people can prove and take it. So far, no serious thing. It's a very bizarre kind of thing.
Thank you much, all of you.
But the caution that I make is, even in prestigious journals such as PNAS, which is one of the top 3 or 4 journals in the world that discloses discoveries and inventions, there's a paper that was published, it came from India, that claims Y haplogroup R1A, this is a 2008 publication, is autochthonous, meaning it originated in India.
Yeah.
That is before 2017, when ancient genome became available. And even in 2008, many people knew that origin is not India, but it got through the system.
Exactly.
PNAS has a very highly rigorous review, but it got published. In fact, there's another paper, Professor Pichappan's paper contains this. He concludes that one. It's wrong. And that was not a malicious error, but it was what I would call as an innocent error. But the other one that came from, I think it came from Lucknow, maybe it is like, I do not know the authors. So errors do creep in, even in the highly respectable journals. So if errors are there, in YouTube, it must be present by 1,000-fold higher.
And then the establishment pressure. Recently, I written in the week journal, the pressure of history, the Harappa special issue. My paper was the pressure of history. The pressure of history is very difficult. Unless you are not belonging to nothing at stake, it's better to not have anything at stake. If you belong to an institution or a report to somebody or a thing, so you have to toe the line. And I was seriously just looking at the last international conference. Somebody is a very reputed scientist in the field of genetics, and while presenting ancient ancestral South Indian part is slightly underplayed thoroughly, and also certain ANI thing presented in the map showing that particular location as the Saraswati Valley. Okay, I can understand that some journalist or somebody writes that. So it comes from the very well-established people. So to the extent that a man from the Archaeological Survey of India, he plays the all-rounder, he throws ball as well as bat. So that's what I have to say, that it's like a ASI versus ANI, Archaeological Survey of India, and playing for ANI. So sometimes you feel very sad.
Are there other questions?
I don't see a question. So I think there was one comment by Mr. Ramalingam, who said the session was very useful and he could had much of learnings. It was an elaborate comment. Any other one? Do you have questions? If not, we can get it to a closure.
We can bring to a closure. I
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very
Mike?
much. Thank you very much to all.
No, we still have to thank you. So Mani is going to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay. We are coming to
We
the
follow the
conclusion.
Tamil tradition of Nandri Navalal. That is, at the
Yes.
end of a visitor's talk, we thank them formally. I'm sure you're
Right.
familiar with this, right?
Yeah, please accept our virtual Ponnadai too. So,
Excellent.
okay. Okay. First, I want to really thank the audience for coming to these meetings 5 weeks in a row and be thoroughly engaged in a rather complex science-related topic without getting too emotionally involved or getting into self-pride kind of stuff. And I appreciate the book by Tony Joseph that repeatedly emphasizes evidence-based conclusions. He from the first chapter until the epilogue, he draws us into this and forces us to look at the evidence. And that is something that I appreciated, because that's something that, as Balakrishnan points out, is difficult even for involved researchers, because there are all kinds of political pressures and other pressures, and it is very, very difficult to overcome them for people who are working for the government or any institution. And this is really, this book shines a very, very bright light in a very dark cave. And this is exactly what we needed. And I really appreciate Professor Arsachalaya, who put this group together and organized these meetings. Though he is not here today, he was the inspiration. And this is a difficult topic, and he stuck to the evidence-based discovery process. And being a scientist, it comes naturally to him. So I appreciate that. And we really appreciate Professor Raj Muttarasan for not only presenting a very difficult Harappan chapter on this book, but also coordinating the Q&A sessions today. That was particularly difficult because there are a lot of questions, complicated questions, and so he needed to give time for the audience to read the question, understand it, and give the authors enough time to respond and also interpret it for the layman. So that he did a brilliant job, and as a professor, it came naturally to him. So I really thank him for that. Last of all, I don't want to forget Dr. Bama, because she organized, a lot of these things very meticulously. She even prepared the presentations for some of us. I appreciate that. And she was the one who somehow managed to persuade Mr. Tony Joseph to actually participate in it. I'm sure he is a very busy man, and I'm sure he was curious about the readers of his book and what kind of question that they may have had. I'm hopeful that he really appreciated how much effort went into reading his book. We actually read every word in his book. As Professor Raj Muttarasan said in his presentation, it took a lot more effort to do a presentation than just do a review. So he read your chapter so thoroughly, and then he had to go look around for all kinds of supporting visuals, and also try to make it accessible to a general audience who are just tuning in for just once a week. So that is a difficult thing. But your book, and I even quoted it multiple times. There are times you handle extremely delicate political topics in a very deft way. Only a journalist can manage that. And I think I appreciate that. At the same time, you don't shy away from confronting tough questions and give very clear-cut answer. You are not going to walk away with a politician's answer. You know exactly where you stand, and you are backing it up with evidence, and you're basically challenging the readers. Please go ahead, read, and the most important thing that I appreciate is I didn't have to go back and read the original papers. You interpret all of them in a very, very accessible manner, and that's something that is very difficult for a non-scientist to do. And this is in the very best tradition of science-related books in the West. And I'm glad that such a book has come out on this topic in India, and it has found readership. So thank you again, Mr. Tony Joseph, for writing the book and also joining us today to answer all our questions. And thanks, Balakrishnan sir, for participating in today's meeting and also helping us understand some of the context that's probably even more difficult for Mr. Joseph to address today. The politics of the whole thing. Okay, so and again, I want to thank all of you for joining week after week, and shortly, we will also come up with some other book to review, and we'll announce that soon. So again, thank you very much to all of you. Ponnade, sir, to Tony Joseph.
Ponnade, virtual Ponnade.
I have to say, this has been the most enjoyable, and this has been the most useful discussion that I have ever had on the book. So thank you to all of you.
We look forward to your part 2 book, The Last Indians of the Last Indians.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye.